Alexander Isak did have to be replaced at half-time, but Liverpool getting back to winning ways away from home here. 5-1 it finished against Eintracht Frankfurt. Much needed, Stevie. Much needed win.
This, other than going one behind, after that, this was the perfect game for Liverpool against the side who tried to sit kind of deep, but who really defensively are not particularly great. And to score 5 goals away from home, after losing 4 on the trot, I mean, was huge. As I said, the goal kind of made you sit up a little. At the time, Liverpool were in total control. And for the first time this season, as I said, after the goal, they were in total control of this match, which is, we haven't been able to say that since the start of the season. So, yes, it's against a side that doesn't defend well, but at the end of the day, you only can do what you do, whoever's put in front of you. And so everybody's going to come off the field pleased. Wirtz is going to be happy. 2 assists, 5 goals, Slot's going to be happy. But for all the positive stuff, they still look vulnerable defensively.
And still, as good a result as this is off the back of 4 defeats in the spin, you could easily argue, I think, that Brentford away at the weekend is bigger.
Tough, yeah.
Because this Champions League table that we'll see in a bit will unfurl in the end, and most of the elite teams will be through. But Brentford away at the weekend, late game on Saturday. Some changes to this game, to this team today that made you think, right, is that a rest for the weekend? Mo Salah has been in poor form, spent the bulk of the game on the bench. Kerkez wasn't involved, Robertson played. When Isak scored, Steve and I looked at each other and said, he should have played against Chelsea, he should have played against Man United. Ekitike, sorry. Yep. Isak has a groin injury reportedly, so that may be a decision made for Arne Slot at the weekend. It might be made for him. But I think it's crystal clear, even if Isak wasn't carrying an injury or isn't still carrying one at the weekend, that Ekitike is the guy this season, and it just makes it even more strange that 2 huge games, Chelsea away and Man United at home, that he's been the guy putting his hand up, saying, I will deliver for you. I can make the difference. And I know he had his little faux pas in the Carabao Cup, which he missed the Crystal Palace game away because of taking the shirt off against Southampton. But that apart, he's been the best player. And again, he showed tonight his confidence in the final third, his ability to finish, his ability to run with the ball. So, what way does Arne Slot go at the weekend? Cody Gakpo's pretty much undroppable at the moment. He's a big threat. He's scoring goals. He's running in behind. He gets in at the back post. Ekitike, I think, has to start. Is Mo Salah an automatic start at Brentford away, and that's why he was getting a rest? I don't know, Stevie. Where are we?
I think, again, we're kind of back to square one in terms of who's playing and who's not. But I think...
Wirtz back in the team after that little cameo tonight.
But that's the problem. We don't know that there are so many variables that he could or couldn't do. The one thing I will say, though, the only good thing about playing against Brentford is they got a taste of what's going to happen against Manchester United, because Brentford ain't going to try and pass it out from the back. Brentford are going to try and play it long. Brentford are going to try and get in behind. So we'll find out if Arne Slot learned anything against Manchester United, because Brentford are going to pose the very same problems. After that, well, let's see.
What do you think of what the boys have been saying, Nedum?
No, I think it's fair. And to talk about this game in particular, I think when they did go 1-0 down, you sort of questioned it a little bit. But then you look into what Frankfurt have done this season so far. They've conceded 18 goals in 7 league games. That's the worst defensive record in all of Bundesliga. So I think for all the problems that Liverpool have had throughout the season so far, I don't think being able to attack and potentially scoring goals is one of the main ones. And so you see the goal from Ekitike at the start, that's a great goal. I think the timing of the run from way before the pass was even ready to go there, incredible. And then the 2 set pieces, come on. I know you can have players try and disrupt people's runs, but at least have players who at some point could affect someone. Because those 2 players that were there for Konate and for Van Dijk, they're basically like the smallest speed bumps in the world for these guys just run and just get a free header in. That's so poor on so many levels. But from when they had that 3-1 lead, you could see some of that confidence start to come back in. And I think some of the midfielders, Curtis Jones, Szoboszlai, Wirtz as well, some of the ball playing was really good. but it was very much against a wounded Frankfurt side. I think we could see that as the game progressed. But as the guys have said, the game on the weekend against Brentford, you can sort of feel a bit of tension about that, because for Brentford themselves, they can go into the game and be ready to suffer, be ready to not have long periods of time on the ball, but know that in the likes of Thiago and others, they can just get those runs in behind, try and prey on mistakes, and if they do take a lead, make it as hard as possible for Liverpool to sort of continue with what they want to do. So I think the manager, he'll know himself that, that is a priority now heading into the weekend, because, as it stands, this Champions League table, whether you're in 12th now, whether you're in 1st, there's still so many games to go that your future can be decided. But if it's another defeat in the Premier League and say the likes of Arsenal get even further ahead of you, that quest to catch them up just feels that little bit tougher, a little bit further away at this moment in time. So, bring on the weekend.
And we always talk about how the game has evolved, and certainly the pitch is bigger now. There's way more space to operate. And I'm not going to go over the Erling Haaland scores lots of goals and Frank saying there's 20 better strikers in the league. But in some sense, to Nedum's point there, it has become, although maybe there's, some seasons there's less goals, some seasons there's more, it does seem it has become a little bit easier to score, particularly from set pieces, because it wasn't that long ago. The basic principle of set pieces was put your biggest physical players on their biggest physical players. Yep. It seems a lot of managers have got away from that. It's put some of the smaller players on to try and block them, and then we'll put the big... And it's just, you've got Gabriel running over people, you've got Van Dijk running over people, you've got Harry Maguire running over people for Man United. It just seems some of the defending or the defensive tactics from set pieces, particularly when we watch the Premier League, is a head scratcher. I think one of the games I saw Alexis McAllister at Liverpool marking, was it Gabriel or whoever it was, and you think, what the hell is going on? So, as Nedum said, some of the people like Konate and Van Dijk, if you're not putting a physical threat against them, they're running over the top of you. And if you get a good delivery into the box, they're going to go and attack it. And your smaller players have got no chance of stopping them.
It makes absolutely no sense. Because when you put somebody who's physically inferior against a Gabriel or a Van Dijk, there's no way they're going to be able to block them, because they're just going to run over the top of them. And then what you're doing is you're giving them a running start. Anybody the size of Van Dijk or Konate or Gabriel, you give them a running start. I don't care how good you are in the air. When you're actually jumping from a starting position, you're never going to be able to be physically strong enough to withhold a challenge or actually jump high enough, because they've got such an advantage on you. So it makes no sense the way they go about it today.
And everybody goes in the dressing room after, and I imagine this is how it happens now, because it certainly happened in the day, was, what my fault? I did what I could, and whereas in some sense when you're seeing all these goals from set pieces, I think sometimes there's going back a little bit to how it used to happen. I don't want to harp back, but it's responsibility. And I know a lot of managers look at the stats, how many teams lose goals from set pieces, if it's zonal, and how much of it's a hybrid, and how much of it's man for man. But if you at least give your main players responsibility to pick up at dangerous set pieces in dangerous positions, then there is accountability there. And I think a lot of it these days, with a lot of this zonal marking, there's just no accountability. Well, he got a run on me, it wasn't my space and it wasn't my man. And we're seeing a lot of goals from set pieces where centre-halves in particular and big strikers are just overpowering the opposition. And we saw that in the Frankfurt game tonight.
In terms of it being Frankfurt tonight, who concede a lot of goals, and it being this stage in the Champions League, is this still what Liverpool needed before the weekend in the Premier League? Yeah,
it was a bit like when I said, when you score a goal, the next time you step on the field, it's a little bit similar, because you've got like somebody like Wirtz, for example, tonight got so many touches, got so much space to be able to pick passes, and it's just about getting in a groove. And so when you get the opportunity to get started in that groove, then you can't wait to step back on the field to continue it. So, yeah, in terms of competition, it wasn't the best. But in terms of just taking the pressure off Liverpool a little bit, it's nice to have a couple of goals and to be able to roll the ball around and come off the field and get changed and be relaxed about it.
What are your thoughts about the weekend and what team we might see, Nedum?
It's a good question. Firstly, it feels weird again seeing Mo Salah on the bench. But then also for the way that they played, there wasn't really that true width on that side from somebody who's done the job that, say, he's done for the years that he's done it for Liverpool. And if Brentford are going to be playing in a back three or possibly back five, perhaps it is going to be a case of having two central strikers. So maybe it will be different. who knows, maybe Kiers will get a start alongside maybe an Ekitike, I'm not sure. But I think in terms of other decisions for the weekend, like I like the fact that Andy Robertson played today and I thought he did well overall. You do need some of that old school sort of mentality and thought when the chips are down at times. And who knows, maybe that gives a bit more confidence to a Van Dijk, to a Konate, than on the other side, They can just fall in line with, say, the way that things have been as opposed to the way that, say, some of the results have gone in recent times. So I think heading into the weekend is positive now. He's got options. He's got good options because people have actually played well, as opposed to, say, the last games where he's looking at his bench, looking at his team and wondering, like, who is the right person for this moment. But then also, I think more importantly, as the guy said right at the top, maybe an injury-free Isak in this particular instance is a good thing because in some ways, as they've kind of alluded to, Ekitike is ready. Alexander Isak is somebody who they're trying to get ready by giving him minutes. And in reality, I think the right decision for these last few weeks would have been to be starting Ekitike and finding a way to get Isak involved with him instead of trading one for the other and unfortunately picking the wrong one.
Arne Slot needs to up his game, doesn't he? I mean, I'm looking at that thing behind... No, Stevie, I'm not being serious. I'm looking at that behind Nedum and thinking, he hasn't been rude to Nedum yet, like Jurgen Klopp.
It's true. He's
looking behind you at that famous, infamous... And I'm thinking, we need to send Nedum to Liverpool in a difficult moment to ask a difficult question to see if we can get Arne Slot to bite.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fair. No, that's fair. But unfortunately, I couldn't have gone to the game on the weekend because every fan in there would have hated me anyway, with it being Liverpool and United. But I'm sure my time will come.
He bit at the weekend, He bit at the weekend a little bit. First, I mean, talking about United's long balls and sitting in, it was just kind of the first time I've just heard them just turn a little bit. Yeah. And listen, it's difficult. You've 4 straight defeats. You lose to one of your biggest rivals, although not at the moment, but historically the biggest rivalry. You're not playing well. You've got all these, issues you need to solve with the new signings and different players and loss of form for some. But he did just give out a little rattled message at the weekend.
He had a defensive tone about him, didn't he?
Yeah.